Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. One of the biggest storylines, really, in all of college football is, can this Clemson offense take a step heading into 2024? And I say biggest storylines in all of college football because you're looking at one of the most dangerous teams in college football. If this offense can take a step, you look at this defense, Dill, we've talked about it extensively over the last couple of weeks. Not many questions on the defensive side of the football. And if this offense can take a step heading into 2024, you're looking at an extremely dangerous team. Want to take a deep dive into the film and numbers of this Clemson offense and talk a little bit about what worked for Clemson in 2023 and then what you need to see improved upon heading into 2024. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out to the Clemson Tiger fans. This is a program that, whether we're talking position deep dives, talking the recruiting trail, cannot thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here. This Clemson offense heading into 2024, what steps do you want to see them take next year?
I think it fundamentally starts with trying to do a little bit of a better job attacking the boundaries, especially down the field. I mean, you look at the average depth of target for this Clemson offense, it's just not high enough. I think they do a decent job attacking the middle of the field at times. I thought that was a positive, especially with Brenningstool and Brown. But I think they need to do a better job attacking those boundaries because you kind of look at what Garrett Riley wants to do, especially what he did at TCU when he had that team humming. They were able to use Quentin Johnson. He was getting the ball down the field, and that opened up the space underneath and for those screens and some of those other plays they want to be able to run. They run way better when you can attack the field. When you can attack downfield, I just didn't think they had enough.
This Garrett Riley offense, I think you hit the hammer on the head, and this is something we've talked about extensively, is Garrett Riley's offense is predicated on space. And how do you create space against the defense is making them defend all blades of grass in the field. Dill, I went back and, I'm a numbers guy, went back and looked at Garrett Riley at TCU in 2022. Max Duggan's average depth of target was 9.7 yards down the field, almost 10 yards. You look at how many times he was throwing 20-plus yards down the field, 18% of his dropbacks. Now you look at Cade Klubnik in this Clemson offense in 2023, average depth of target, only 7 yards, only throwing 9% of his attempts, 20-plus yards down the field. If you want to create space against the defense, you need to make them respect what you can do attacking that deeper third. And you just saw Clemson not really be able to do that. And I think the number that we all have circled, 6 yards per pass attempt, that was 121st in the country. If you can make defenses respect you, attacking down the field, not only are you going to hit more explosive plays pushing the ball down the field, but it's going to open it up for those short intermediate route concepts underneath as well. And I think that's truly the key for this Clemson offense. Because again, Garrett Riley offense predicated in space. You got to be able to manufacture that space. And Clemson has to do a better job of that heading into 2024.
And I know a lot of people, you want to pin the blame on someone, whether you want to blame the coaches, whether you want to blame Cade Klubnik, whether you want to blame the wideouts. I mean, in fairness, a lot of things kind of didn't necessarily set up so great for Clemson last year. I think there were a lot of injuries in the preseason, a lot of injuries during the season, a very young quarterback, obviously, and a first-year head coach. Or first-year offense coordinator, I should say. So you just kind of maybe expect some level of growing pains. I think the offensive line was mostly good, but there were some moments where you probably couldn't totally trust them to hold up in protection to get the ball down the field. Looking at that Miami game, of course, is one. But I think there were a lot of things that kind of came together. At the end of the day, they got to get fixed. And I don't know how they do it. You have your plans, but that it will be a big thing I think we're all looking for. Because if they can do that, I like all the talent they have. I love what they have at tight end. I like what they have at running back. They're really good for most of the
I like to, and we're going to get into the personnel a little bit later. I want to give at least the listeners kind of a picture of what I'm envisioning, right? And I want to go to the film here and talk a little bit about what we saw Clemson struggle with. And the first play I want to pull up is, I know all Clemson fans were relatively frustrated with the swing passes and the screens and them not working. And my kind of take on this is I'm not as frustrated with the play calls as much as you're not really setting up these kind of play calls, right? Clemson, again, average depth of target, only 7 yards down the field, one of the least in all of the country. Teams didn't respect what they could do down the field. So what do you see when you're trying to throw these screen passes? You're seeing press coverage. You're seeing defenses almost beg Clemson to push the ball down the field. And when you're doing that, it's really hard to run these kind of screens, right? You play this film here. I mean, we're keyed in on these screens. We are not afraid of what Clemson's doing 20-plus yards down the field, and we're breaking up passes. I think another really good example of this is against Florida State, where you got a 2nd and 5. You look at all these routes. What is Florida State doing right here? They're not getting any depth in their coverage because they know Clemson's not pushing the ball down the field. They've seen it on the film. You run this play out and you freeze frame it. What is Florida State doing? They're sitting on all of these routes, right? You have 2 routes up here, 3 routes down here. Not a single eligible receiver for the Clemson Tigers ran 5+ yards down the field. They're all sitting it down within 5 yards, and teams expect this. And so there's no throwing lanes for Clemson to open up that short, intermediate kind of concepts. And when you don't even show the desire or ability to attack down the field, that's what you're going to get. And it's really hard to manufacture that space when you're not testing teams down the field.
And that's the big thing. I think at the end of the day, for what Garrett Riley wants to do to work, they do need to have something. They do need to have something down the field because, I mean, you're right. You even look at where the safeties are lining up. They're all within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. They're not bailing upon the play being snapped. I mean, it makes it hard to run the football. It makes it hard to get your athletes where you want to get them. I mean, you kind of look at somebody like you want Tyler Brown to have some space to operate. Really, really good with the ball in his hand. Same thing with Antonio Williams. But somehow, I mean, that's going to be predicated on guys like Adam Randall or TJ Moore opening it up for them and being able to attack cornerbacks. If you leave them one-on-one with no safety, you need to be able to make teams pay when they do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to go to some things that are kind of positives. Is I think some of this, you saw Clemson do this at a high level at times during the season. You just didn't see it on a consistent basis. And again, what's Florida State doing? They're around the line of scrimmage. Like, they're not giving much cushion. They're saying, all right, attack down the field. Show that you can beat us down the field. And that's exactly what Clemson does on this play. Now, you know Cade Klubnik has the arm to make this happen, right? He was a 5-star for a reason. And quite frankly, I think the wide receivers are talented enough to make it happen as well. You roll this clip here, and you see Cade Klubnik go through his reads, step up, deliver a strike down the field to Tyler Brown. You see all of that area that's being created down the field because they're all kind of scrunching down on that defense. Want to see more of that. And Dill, I think one of the biggest, I know it's one of your favorites, is Jake Bringenstool. Now, outside of Colston Loveland, I would ask Clemson fans, name me a better tight end in the country than Jake Bringenstool. Use him in a lot of different ways. You have him kind of lined up as that H-back right now. Get him in some matchups that are favorable to him. And what you're going to see him do is run kind of down that seam with the linebacker and man coverage. This is a massive matchup. Go give Jake Bringenstool a chance to go make a play. And what happens when you do that? He's coming down with the football. I think Clemson has the talent to do it both at the quarterback and pass catcher position. You just got to see them do it in 2024. And if they can, those short intermediate route concepts are going to start opening up, and those yards after the catch, the kind of staple of that Garrett Riley offense, I think is going to be in full effect.
And that's where, again, you see the matchup problems. You see who they are. It starts with Bringenstool. When they started to get him more involved, he is the guy who, again, I don't think teams really have a ton of answers for. I think Tyler Brown really played good football for most of the year. I love what he can do. But again, what does like that all kind of say? Everything they had was in the middle of the field. I mean, to me, it's 100% about, can a guy like Adam Randall, can a guy like TJ Moore, Troy Stellato can really burn it. Can one of those guys kind of step up and like take control of this offense like you've seen with guys like Sammy Watkins and DeAndre Hopkins, some of these big alpha dog wide receivers that have passed through this Clemson team. I mean, that's when that team rocked. And they had wide receivers who, again, if you stick them on that number one cornerback, if you leave them alone, they're a problem. I just don't think you had that this year on the boundaries. Again, you have a lot of really good weapons who showed that what they can do in the middle of the field, but I do still think that constricts what you have and how much space you can create if you can't attack the boundaries.
All right, let's have that conversation then. You know, I think you talk about using the middle of the field. Tyler Brown, Antonio Williams, guy like Jake Bringenstool. I don't have any questions about what Clemson can do, work in the middle, work in those short intermediate concepts. Tyler Brown, Antonio Williams, they can create separation like the best wide receivers in the country. I think the question is, all right, who's stepping up on the boundary? And my argument would be they have some guys that we're very excited about, right? And I think it starts with someone like Adam Randall, where you just look at a picture of Adam Randall and say, that's a true boundary wide receiver, one that can do some special things from a physicality standpoint. I think the MO for him is you got to stay healthy, right? We haven't really seen Adam Randall full health for the duration of a season. I think another guy to mention is Troy Stellato, who I'm hearing some rumors that he's working in as a slot wide receiver in spring practice, which I don't necessarily hate. He says he's most comfortable there, but I mean, I look at Troy Stellato and say, that's a big frame. That's some really good ball skills coming out of high school. And most importantly, he's the fastest wide receiver on this team. I mean, you talk about long speed, Troy Stellato has it, but Dill, the guy that I think can fundamentally change this offense, and I'm going to put a lot of pressure on him, and I know he's a true freshman, it's going to be TJ Moore, right? You kind of mentioned the T. Higgins, the Sammy Watkins, the Hopkins. What kind of wide receiver has that capability? Dill, true freshman TJ Moore, I think, has that. And if he can come in and be that true, I don't know why they have him on the slot in this depth chart. He ain't playing no slot for Clemson in 2024. If he can unlock that down the field, on the boundary, I think you're going to see some massive strides from this Clemson offense.
Because again, you kind of love what you have everywhere else.
I love it.
You like the offensive line. I thought once they started to figure out that unit, I mean, working in Colin Sadler, working in Harris Sewell, like those guys started to play really good football. I thought the offensive line as a whole against Notre Dame, like that's a really good unit. That's a unit that I think can win a lot of football games. Tight end, we obviously have already talked about. Brennan Sewell's the man. Phil Maffa coming back. He's a stud. You love everything about this offense, I think, for the most part, but you need that number one boundary wide receiver to me. That's
what's worth mentioning, I think, by the way, I'll just say without Mitchell Mays, like I like this Clemson offensive line a lot. And y'all know I don't drag individual players. Mitchell Mays was a problem for Clemson in 2023. Now, the last thing I kind of want to put a cherry on top of this is not only when you're attacking down the field, are you going to give more space to Antonio Williams, to Tyler Brown working underneath? You're also going to be able to run the football really effectively too. Again, how many 7-8-man boxes did you see Clemson go up against last year? A lot of them. And they still ran the ball relatively effectively. But what happens if, all right, now TJ Moore's a guy you can't be in single coverage with. You got to put a safety over top of him, not even throwing a guy like Brian Wesco. What happens when they have two safeties back? You have a little bit of a lighter box. Phil Maffa was phenomenal in 2023. I think you even see the run game take some strides heading into 2024. Dill, I think it's all predicated on attacking down the field. And I think three things kind of need to come together. One, I think Cade Klubnik needs to take a step. Like, I am not just going to get up here and blame Garrett Riley. Cade Klubnik wasn't good enough last year. I think you need to see Garrett Riley have a little bit more confidence in not only his quarterback, but wide receivers to work downfield. And I think you need to see these wide receivers stay healthy and step up as well. Now, I think what's exciting is I think all three of those boxes you want to see checked. I see it on paper. Like, I think all three of those boxes can be checked. Now it's just got to happen on Saturdays in 2024. And if it does, Dill, we're sleeping. Like, we talk about the ACC championship. We're talking about Florida State, Miami. This is a Clemson team that certainly.
I mean, people have 100% forgotten about Clemson. They think Dabo Swinney stinks. They think the game's passed them by. I mean, you look, this is as talented of a roster as anyone in the country, or at least right up there. I mean, 100%. They still recruit the way they need to recruit. They're developing guys the way they need to. It's just they've had this fundamental issue where they've really struggled to be explosive on offense for a couple of years now. Again, you fix that. Defense has been right where you want to see it. Offensive lines kind of come back around and become a better unit. I mean, they have what they need to have. That Dabo has what he needs to have will win a lot of games. You still got to make it happen.
They got to make it happen. And it's going to be really exciting. I can't wait to watch the spring game and kind of get some glimpses of some of that young talent, maybe taking that step heading into 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.